You are not going to believe the absolute nerve of what happened at my dining room table last Sunday. I mean, I have heard some crazy stories in my time. I watch all the drama channels, I talk to my neighbors. But you never think you're going to be the one living inside a nightmare until you wake up and realize you've been funding it for a decade. Years. That is a decade of my life, my husband's sweat, and our retirement fund, all poured into a black hole of entitlement. And the way it ended. The words that came out of my daughter-in-law's mouth. It was enough to make anyone flip a table. But I didn't flip the table. No. I did something so much better. You have to stick around to hear the comeback because, let me tell you, seeing the color drain from her face was worth every single penny we spent. But to really understand why that moment was so satisfying, you have to understand how we got there. You have to understand how a sweet, normal family arrangement turned into a parasitic disaster that almost ruined my marriage. My name is Emily. My husband, David, and I have lived in this two-story colonial just outside the city for over 30 years. It's a good house. It's got a wraparound porch where David likes to drink his coffee, a big backyard where we raised our son, Michael, and enough memories to fill a library. We worked hard for this place. David worked double shifts at the plant for years, missing birthdays and anniversaries just to make sure the mortgage was paid early. I worked part-time at the local library and managed the household budget like a hawk. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We were looking forward to the golden years. You know, that time in your life where you can finally exhale. Maybe take a cruise, maybe just sleep in past 7 in the morning. That was the dream. Our son Michael, he's a good kid. Or he was a good kid. He was always soft-hearted, a bit of a dreamer. He met Sophia in college. Sophia was intense. That's the polite word for it. She was beautiful, driven, and had very specific tastes. When they got married, David and I were happy for them. We paid for a lovely reception, nothing too fancy but elegant, and we thought, okay, our job is done. The bird has flown the nest. They got an apartment in the city. Both had decent entry-level jobs, and everything seemed fine. Then, the economy took a little stumble. This was about 10 years ago. Michael's company downsized, and he was one of the first to go. Sophia was working, but her salary barely covered their rent in that trendy downtown loft she insisted they needed. They burned through their savings in about 3 months. I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. David was watching the game and I was folding laundry. Michael's voice was shaking. He sounded so small, like he was 5 years old again and had broken a window. He said, "Mom, we're in trouble. We're getting evicted. We have nowhere to go." As a mother, your heart just stops. You don't think about logic. You don't think about boundaries. You just think about your child being on the street. I looked at David, and without even saying a word, we had a silent conversation. We nodded. I told Michael, "Come home. Just for a little while. Just until you get back on your feet." Sophia was in the background of the call, crying. I felt bad for her then. I really did. I thought, poor girl, she's just starting her life and the rug got pulled out. Little did I know, those tears were going to dry up pretty fast once she saw how comfortable life was at Hotel Mom and Dad. They moved in that weekend. It was chaotic. Boxes everywhere in the living room. Furniture shoved into the garage. We gave them the master suite upstairs because it had the attached bathroom, and David and I moved into the guest room downstairs. We figured, hey, it's only for a few months, right? Let them have the space so they don't feel like they're living in a kid's room. That was our first mistake. Never give up your territory. The first month was actually okay. Felt like a full house again. I cooked big dinners. Pot roast, lasagna, all of Michael's favorites. Sophia was polite. She'd help with the dishes sometimes. David helped Michael polish up his resume. Felt like a family banding together during a crisis. I was paying for the groceries, obviously, because they had zero income. David covered the increase in the electric bill because, let me tell you, Sophia liked the thermostat set to tropical. But we didn't say anything. They were struggling. Then Michael got a job. It wasn't his dream job, but it was steady work at a logistics firm. Decent pay. We celebrated with a nice steak dinner that David grilled. I remember sitting on the patio thinking, okay, great. Now they can save up for a deposit and first month's rent, and probably be out in 3 or 4 months. 3 months came and went. I brought it up gently one morning when Sophia was in the kitchen making a smoothie with my expensive organic berries. I said, "Hey, how's the apartment hunting going?" She didn't even look at me. She just kept blending and said, "Oh, the market is terrible right now, Emily. The prices are insane." Michael and I decided it makes more sense to save up a bigger cushion before we move. We don't want to end up back here again, do we? She smiled at me. It was a sweet smile, but there was something behind it. Challenge. And she was right in a way. We didn't want them failing again. So I said, "Sure, that makes sense. Stay a few more months. Build that safety net." 6 months turned into a year. By this point, Sophia had found a new job too. A marketing gig at a fashion startup. She was making good money. Michael was making good money. But suddenly, the dynamic in the house shifted. They weren't guests anymore. They were roommates who didn't pay rent. David noticed it first. He's a numbers guy. He tracks our expenses. One night he sat me down at the kitchen table with his calculator. He looked tired. He said, Our grocery bill has tripled. The water bill is through the roof. And have you seen the cable package? Someone upgraded us to the premium sports and movie tier. That's an extra $100 a month." I confronted Michael about it. He looked sheepish. He said, "Oh yeah, Sophia really wanted to watch that new series on the premium channel. Thought she asked you." She hadn't asked me. I said, "Michael, we're happy to help, but your dad and I are on a budget. We're trying to save for retirement. If you guys want premium cable, you need to pay for it." He promised they would. He said he'd transfer the money. He never did. And I, being the softy mom, didn't want to nag him. I didn't want to cause tension. I just paid the bill. Then came the lifestyle creep. You know what I'm talking about. When you're broke, you eat pasta and beans. When you're living rent-free with your parents, apparently you live like a celebrity. Amazon packages started arriving daily. Not essentials. I'm talking designer shoes, high-end electronics, specialized kitchen gadgets that clogged up my counters. One day I came home from the library and there was a brand new car in the driveway. A luxury SUV. Black shiny leather seats. It looked expensive. My first thought was that we had company. But then Sophia walked out of the house, dangling the keys, looking like she was in a commercial. "Look at her. Isn't she a beauty?" he squealed. I stood there, holding 2 bags of groceries that I had paid for, staring at a car that cost more than my husband made in a year. I said, "Sophia, did you buy this?" "Leased it," she said happily. "The payments are surprisingly manageable since we don't have housing costs. Plus, we need a reliable car for when we eventually move out." That phrase, "since we don't have housing costs," it rang in my ears like a siren. She wasn't grateful that we were housing them. She viewed it as an asset she could leverage to buy toys. I went inside and found David. He was fuming. He had seen the car too. He said, "Emily, this is getting ridiculous. I'm driving a 12-year-old truck with a broken heater, and they just leased a luxury tank. We have to charge them rent." He was right. We sat them down that night. It was awkward. Michael looked at his feet. Sophia looked offended. David said, "Look, we love you guys. But you're both working now. You have 2 incomes. You have a new car. It's been over a year. We need you to start contributing. $500 a month. That covers the extra utilities and food. It's dirt cheap rent." Sophia crossed her arms. She looked at Michael, waiting for him to defend her. When he didn't speak, she let out a heavy sigh. 500. She asked like we had asked for $1 million. "We're trying to save for a down payment on a house, David. If we pay you rent, that just pushes our timeline back. Do you want us here forever?" It was emotional manipulation, pure and simple. But then she dropped the bomb. "Besides," she said, looking down at her stomach and touching it gently, "we have other expenses coming up. We're going to need every penny." The room went silent. Michael looked up, a massive grin breaking out on his face. "We're pregnant, Mom," he whispered. And just like that, the anger evaporated. I was going to be a grandmother. David was going to be a grandfather. We hugged, we cried, we opened a bottle of champagne. The rent discussion was forgotten. How could we charge them rent when they were bringing our grandchild into the world? We had to support them. We had to help them save for the baby. That was the trap. And we walked right into it smiling. The next 9 months were a blur of preparation. And by preparation I mean David and I paying for everything. Sophia needed a specific organic diet. Bought it. She needed the nursery painted and furnished. David did the labor. And we split the cost of the furniture because Michael said things were tight. Noah was born on a snowy morning in January. He was perfect. Big blue eyes, tuft of blonde hair. When I held him I forgot about the bills. I forgot about the attitude. I just saw the future. But having a baby in the house changed everything. Sophia quit her job. She said daycare was too expensive and she wanted to raise Noah herself. I respected that. It's a noble choice. But that meant they were down to one income again, Michael's. And since they still had the luxury car lease and the credit card bills from their shopping sprees, they were supposedly broke again. So the move-out date got pushed. Again. We'll move when Noah is 2, Sophia said. When he's a bit more independent. 2 years. Do you know what it's like to live with a toddler, a stressed-out son, and a demanding daughter-in-law in a house that was meant for 2 retired people? It's loud. It's messy. The house was never clean. Toys were everywhere. If I tried to tidy up, Sophia would snap at me, saying I was moving things and disrupting her system. Her system. It was my living room. David was getting worn down. He was working extra overtime now because our electricity bill was astronomical with a baby in the house. Laundry running 24/7. Heating cranked up. He looked 10 years older. I'd hear him sighing in the bathroom in the mornings. Broke my heart. We were supposed to be slowing down. Instead we were running a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. Noah turned 2. Then 3. Then 4. Every time we brought up them moving out there was a crisis. Oh, Michael's car broke down, we have to fix it. Oh, Noah needs to go to this specific preschool that costs a fortune. We can't afford rent and tuition. Oh, the housing market crashed again. Oh, the housing market is too hot again. It was always something. And the worst part was the entitlement. It wasn't just that they were living there. It was that they acted like they owned the place. Sophia started redecorating without asking. She painted the kitchen a hideous shade of gray while I was out visiting my sister. I came home and just stared at the walls. I thought it looked more modern, she said, shrugging. That yellow was so dated, Emily. I did you a favor. Favor. You painted my kitchen without asking me. I wanted to scream. But I looked at Noah, playing with his trucks on the floor, and I bit my tongue. I did it for Noah. That became my mantra. I do it for Noah. But resentment builds. It builds like plaque in your arteries. Slowly, quietly, until it blocks everything. We stopped going on vacations. We hadn't been on a trip in 6 years. Meanwhile, Michael and Sophia went to Disney World with Noah. They went to the beach for long weekends. How can you afford that? David asked them once, when they came back with tans and souvenirs. Oh, my parents chipped in, Sophia said breezily. Plus, we save so much by living here, we deserve a little treat, don't we? Deserve. That word. It triggered something in David. That night, lying in our cramped guest room bed, David whispered to me, Emily, I can't do this much longer. I'm tired. I want our house back. I want our life back. They are bleeding us dry. I grabbed his hand. It was rough and calloused. I knew he was right. We had been enabling them for nearly a decade. We thought we were helping, but we were actually crippling them and destroying ourselves. Said, you're right. We need an exit strategy. But we can't just kick them out. They have Noah. Then David said something that surprised me. He said, have you noticed the mail lately? I was confused. No, why? David sat up. There have been bank statements coming for Sophia. From a bank I don't recognize. I accidentally opened one yesterday thinking it was mine. I didn't read the details, I closed it immediately, but I saw the balance at the bottom, Mem. I held my breath. How much? He looked me dead in the eye. 6 figures. I sat up straight. What? 6 figures, Emily. Over $150,000. And that was just one account. My head started spinning. If they had that kind of money, Why were we paying for their groceries? Why was David working overtime? Why were we crammed into the guest room while they slept in the master suite? Hit me like a physical blow. They weren't struggling. They were hoarding. They were using us to build their fortune while we spent hours keeping the lights on. For the next week I watched them. I watched them like a hawk. I noticed the little things. The way Sophia would hide her phone screen when I walked in. The way they would stop talking abruptly when David entered the room. They were planning something. And I realized we didn't need to feel guilty anymore. We didn't need to protect them. They were fine. In fact, they were better than fine. They were rich and they were cheap. Sunday rolled around. Sunday dinners were a tradition. It was the one time we all sat down together. Usually I cooked a massive meal. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, homemade rolls. I spent 4 hours in the kitchen that day. I was tired. My back ached. But I did it. We sat down. David carved the chicken. Noah was babbling about his cartoons. Michael looked nervous. He kept tapping his fork on the table. Sophia looked smug. That's the only word for it. She had a little glimmer in her eye, like a cat that just ate the canary and is waiting for you to notice the feathers. We started eating. The conversation was light, talking about the weather, Noah's school. Then Sophia put her fork down. It made a clatter against the china. She looked at Michael, then at us. She cleared her throat. So she said, her voice loud and clear. We have an announcement. David and I exchanged a look. Was she pregnant again? Was Michael getting a promotion? Sophia smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was cold. Calculated. She said, Michael and I have been doing a lot of thinking. And a lot of saving. My heart started to pound. Here it comes. She continued, thanks to you guys paying for everything for the last 10 years, the food, the bills, the repairs, everything, we've managed to save up quite a bit. More than we expected, actually. She paused for effect. So she said we bought a house. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That's wonderful. I started to say. I was genuinely relieved. Finally. They were launching. But she held up a hand to stop me. She wasn't done. It's a beautiful place, she said. 5 bedrooms, huge pool, in the gated community over on the north side. We closed on it yesterday. The north side. That was the most expensive area in the county. Houses there went for nearly $1 million. David's jaw dropped slightly. That's ambitious, David said slowly. Sophia laughed. Sharp tinkling sound. Oh, we can afford it. Because we didn't throw our money away. We put every dime we made into investments while we lived here for free. It was really the smartest financial move we could have made. She looked around the room at our worn-out wallpaper, at the old table we were eating on. But she added, and this is the part that froze my blood. Now that we have our own place, things are going to change. We've realized that, well, this environment isn't really healthy for us anymore. You guys are getting older. You're set in your ways. And frankly, we want our privacy. We want Noah to grow up away from all this. All this? I asked, my voice trembling. All this love. All this support. She rolled her eyes. You know what I mean. The nagging. The hovering. We're cutting ties. We're moving out next weekend and we're going to need some space. A lot of space. We won't be visiting for a long time. We want to live alone. Just us 3. No grandparents interfering. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. She had just admitted to using us for a decade to build her dream life. And now that she had it, she was discarding us like an old wrapper. She was taking our son and our grandson and locking them away in a gated community, cutting us out after we had given them everything. I looked at Michael. Michael, do you agree with this? He couldn't even meet my eyes. He mumbled, Sophia thinks it's best for our family unit, Mom. We just need boundaries. Boundaries. After 10 years of no boundaries. I looked at David. I expected him to be shouting. I expected him to throw them out right then and there. But he wasn't shouting. He was smiling. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who holds a royal flush in a game of poker. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table. He looked at Sophia, then at Michael. He said, "That is fascinating news, Sophia. Really. Congratulations on the new house. Sounds expensive." "It is," she snapped. "But we can handle it." David nodded slowly. "That's good. That's really good. 'Cause Emily and I have some news too." Sophia looked confused. "What news?" David reached under his chair and pulled out a manila envelope. He placed it on the table. He said, "See, your mom and I have been doing some thinking too. We realized that this house, it's just too big for us. Too much maintenance. Too much cost. Especially since we've been carrying 4 people on a 2-person budget for 10 years. Sophia narrowed her eyes. "So, what are you saying?" I knew where this was going. David and I had talked about this as a nuclear option months ago, but we never thought we'd actually use it. I felt a surge of adrenaline. David tapped the envelope. He said, "We sold the house." Sophia froze. "You what?" "We sold it," David said cheerfully. "Actually, we sold it to a developer about 3 months ago. The market is peaking, just like you said. They offered us a cash deal we couldn't refuse. We've just been renting it back from them on a month-to-month basis until we figured out where to go. But since you guys are moving out next weekend, that works out perfectly." He leaned in closer. "Because the developers are tearing this place down in 2 weeks to build condos. We have to be out by the 1st of the month." Sophia's face went pale. But what?" David asked. "But we were counting on leaving our furniture here for a few weeks while we painted the new place. And we haven't actually closed on the new house yet. I lied about closing yesterday to make a point. We close in 45 days. We have nowhere to go for a month and a half." David just shrugged. It was a beautiful shrug. "Well," he said, "that sounds like a you problem. Because your mom and we're moving to." "Where?" Michael asked, panic rising in his voice. I spoke up then. My voice was steady. I felt stronger than I had in years. "Florida," I said. "We bought a lovely little condo in a 55-plus community. Near the beach. No guest rooms. Just 1 bedroom and a den for your father's hobbies. We leave in 10 days. Sophia stood up. "You can't do that. You can't just sell the house. This is Noah's home." "It was my home," I said calmly. "And you treated it like a hotel. And now the hotel is closed. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. Actually, no, you could have heard a heartbreak, but for the first time in 10 years it wasn't mine. It was Sophia's entitlement shattering into a million little jagged pieces right there on the hardwood floor. She stood there, her face flushing a deep, angry crimson. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, mind you, but from rage. Pure, unadulterated rage that someone had finally dared to pull the plug on her life support system. "You are lying," she hissed. Her voice was low, venomous. "You wouldn't sell this house. You love this house. You raised Michael here. You wouldn't just sell it out from under us without asking." David didn't even blink. He took a sip of his water, calm as a cucumber. "Asking?" David repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Did you ask us when you moved in for a weekend and stayed for a decade? Did you ask us when you bought a luxury car instead of paying rent? Did you ask us when you decided to cut us out of our grandson's life the second you got what you wanted?" He leaned forward, and his voice dropped an octave. It was scary calm. "We didn't sell it out from under you, Sophia. We sold it to save ourselves. And honestly, we assumed you were moving out next week anyway. You said you bought a house. You said you were leaving. So why does it matter if we sold the place? Unless you were lying about something." Sophia looked like a fish out of water, her mouth opening and closing. She looked at Michael, desperate for backup. "Michael," she screeched, "do something. They're kicking us out. They're making us homeless." Michael looked at his father, then at me. He looked torn. I could see the gears turning in his head. For the first time he was seeing the reality of the situation. He wasn't a child anymore. He was a grown man with a wife and a kid, and he had nowhere to go. "Mom, Dad," he stammered. "Come on. You can't be serious. 45 days. We can't live in a hotel for 45 days. We have Noah. We have all our furniture. Have stuff. That was the key word. Of. I looked around the room. The piles of Amazon boxes in the corner. The expensive toys cluttering the hallway. The sheer volume of consumer junk they had accumulated because they had zero housing costs. I stood up and started clearing the plates. Well, I said breezily, sounds like you better start packing. The developers are coming for a final walkthrough on Thursday. And the demolition crew is scheduled for the 1st. If your stuff is still here, it's going to be part of the foundation for the new condos. I walked into the kitchen. I didn't wait for a response. I started scraping the plates, and I have to tell you, I had a smile on my face so big it actually hurt. Felt light. Felt free. I heard shouting from the dining room. Sophia screaming, Michael trying to calm her down, Noah starting to cry because of the noise. Usually, I would have rushed in there to comfort Noah. I would have played peacemaker. But not tonight. Tonight I washed the dishes. I hummed a little tune. I let them handle their own mess. The next morning the reality set in. I woke up at 6 like usual. I made coffee. The house was quiet. Usually I'd tiptoe around so I wouldn't wake the beast, Sophia, or the baby. Today, I turned on the radio. I clattered the pots and pans. I was making breakfast for David and myself. Just as Michael came stumbling down into the kitchen around 7, looking like he hadn't slept a wink. His hair was a mess, heavy bags under his eyes. Mom, he groaned, rubbing his face. We need to talk. I poured him a cup of coffee. I'm not a monster. Good morning, Michael, I said cheerfully. Want some eggs? He ignored the offer. Mom, Sophia is flipping out. She's been up all night looking for short-term rentals. Do you know how expensive it is to rent a furnished place for 6 weeks? It's insane. And nobody wants to rent for such a short term with a toddler and... Well, we have a cat now too. Froze. Cat. Oh yeah, he mumbled. Sophia rescued a cat last week. She was hiding it in the master bedroom until we told you. Just laughed. I couldn't help it. Of course she had a secret cat. Add it to the list. Well, Michael, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. That sounds stressful. But you guys have all that savings, right? Sophia said you saved every dime. You have 6 figures in the bank. Surely you can afford an Airbnb or a nice extended stay hotel. He looked at the floor. Well, technically yes, he said. But that money is for the down payment and the closing costs and the renovations on the new place. If we spend 10 grand on a temporary rental and storage units, that comes out of our furniture budget. Sophia had her heart set on this specific Italian leather sectional. I slammed my mug down on the counter. Coffee sloshed over the rim. Are you kidding me? I asked, staring at him. You are facing homelessness in 2 weeks. And you're worried about an Italian leather sectional? Michael flinched. It's not just the couch, Mom. It's the principle. We had a plan. You guys ruined the plan. I took a deep breath. No, Michael. We changed our plan. You're just mad that our plan doesn't revolve around carrying you anymore. Just then, Sophia walked in. She didn't look tired. She looked ready for war. She was wearing her business face. Tight ponytail, sharp eyes. She was holding a clipboard. A literal clipboard. Okay, she announced, ignoring the coffee and the tension. We've worked out a solution. Oh, have you? David asked, walking in from the backyard. He had been out checking the perimeter, probably making sure the sold sign was visible from the street. Yes, Sophia said firmly. Since you guys have created this emergency, it's only fair you help solve it. We did the math. Renting a place for 45 days is a waste of capital. So here's what's going to happen. She tapped the clipboard with a pen. You guys are moving to Florida, right? When do you close on the condo down there? We already closed, David said cautiously. We have the keys. We're driving down next Tuesday. Perfect, Sophia said. So here's the plan. We will drive down with you. We'll stay in your condo in Florida for the 45 days until our house here is ready. Michael can work remotely. He's been asking for permission anyway. I'll take care of Noah. It'll be like a little family vacation before we settle into our new life. She looked up and smiled. Bright fake plastic smile. Plus she added, it'll give you guys a chance to bond with Noah before we, go our separate ways. I looked at David. He looked at me. We both burst out laughing. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was a laugh of pure disbelief. The audacity was staggering. She had just threatened to cut us off completely the night before. And now she wanted to crash in our retirement condo for 6 weeks. Sophia's smile faltered. Why are you laughing? Oh, honey, I said, wiping a tear from my eye. That is a creative plan. But there are 2 problems. She crossed her arms. What problems? Problem number 1, David said, counting on his fingers. It's a 1-bedroom condo. It's 800 square feet. Where exactly do you think you, Michael, Noah, and a secret cat are going to sleep? We can make it work. Sophia insisted. We'll sleep on the pull-out couch in the den. Noah can sleep in a pack-and-play. We've lived in tight quarters before. We haven't, David said sharply. We are done living in tight quarters. We bought that place for peace and quiet, not to run a daycare center. And problem number 2. Sophia demanded, her voice getting shrill. Problem number 2, I said, savoring the moment, is that it's a 55-plus community. Strictly enforced. No permanent residents under the age of 55. Visitors are limited to 2 weeks max. And they have to be registered. If we show up with a toddler and a U-Haul full of stuff, the HOA will evict us before we even unpack. Sophia's face dropped. She hadn't thought of that. She assumed the world just bent to her will. But, you can get an exception. She argued. Tell them it's an emergency. No, David said firmly. We are not starting our new life by breaking the rules and becoming the neighbors everyone hates. The answer is no. Sophia slammed the clipboard onto the counter. Made a loud crack. So you're just going to leave us on the street? He screamed. Your own flesh and blood. You have money, Sophia. Shouted back. You have a 6-figure bank account. Go to a hotel. Go to a motel. Go to a campground for all I care. But you are not coming with us. She stormed out of the room. Michael stood there, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. You guys are being really harsh, he whispered. And you are being really ungrateful, David shot back. You have 10 days, Michael. I suggest you stop staring at me and start packing boxes. The next week was pure chaos. It was the longest week of my life. Our house, which had been relatively orderly, turned into a war zone. We were packing our things, selling furniture we didn't need, boxing up keepsakes. We were organized. We had a system. Michael and Sophia. They were a disaster. Because they had lived rent-free for so long, they had accumulated an obscene amount of things. And not just things, big things. A treadmill that was used as a clothes hanger. A massive espresso machine that took up half the counter. Boxes and boxes of clothes that still had tags on them. They didn't have enough boxes. They didn't have tape. They kept coming to us, asking to borrow supplies. Mom, can we use your tape gun? Mom, do you have any extra bubble wrap? No, I'd say. I'm using it. Go to the store. It felt petty, but it was necessary. They needed to learn how to function as adults. The tension in the house was so thick you could choke on it. Sophia stopped speaking to us entirely. She would walk into a room, see us, and turn around. She communicated only through aggressive sighs and slamming doors. One afternoon, about 3 days before the move, I was in the garage labeling boxes. I heard a car pull up. It was a big, shiny luxury sedan. I didn't recognize it. A woman stepped out. She was dressed to the nines. Designer suit, heels, huge sunglasses. It was Sophia's mother, Barbara. Now, I hadn't seen Barbara in about 3 years. She lived 2 towns over but was too busy to visit. She was a piece of work. If you thought Sophia was entitled, you should meet the woman who created her. Barbara marched up the driveway like she owned the place. Emily, he barked. We need to talk. I put down my marker. Hello, Barbara. To what do I owe the pleasure? She didn't offer a greeting. She just stood there, hands on her hips, looking at the pile of boxes in my garage. Sophia called me, she said. She is hysterical. She tells me you are kicking them out on the street with a baby. How could you be so cruel? I stared at her. Cruel. Barbara, they have lived here for 10 years. For free. We have paid for their food, their utilities, their lifestyle. We raised your grandson while Sophia slept in until noon. Where were you? Barbara waved her hand dismissively. That's what grandparents do, Emily. You help. But to sell the house right when they are vulnerable. It's vindictive. Vulnerable. I laughed. Barbara, your daughter drives a better car than I do. They have over $100,000 in the bank. They bought $1 million house. They aren't vulnerable. They are inconvenienced. Well, she huffed. They have nowhere to go for 6 weeks. Sophia asked if they could stay with me, but... Well, you know my condo is white carpet. And with a toddler. And a cat. It's just not feasible. My nerves couldn't take it. I almost fell over. So let me get this straight, I said, stepping closer to her. You won't take in your own daughter and grandson for 6 weeks because of your white carpet. But I'm the villain for wanting to retire after 10 years of servitude. That's different, she sniffed. You're the mother of the son. It's the man's family's responsibility to provide shelter. I saw red. Actual red dots dancing in my vision. Get off my driveway, Barbara, I said quietly. Excuse me. Said get off my driveway. Before I turn the hose on you. She gasped, clutching her pearls, literally clutching them. You wouldn't dare. I reached for the garden hose. She turned on her heel and scurried back to her car faster than I've ever seen anyone move in heels. She peeled out of the driveway and I stood there, hose in hand, feeling like Wonder Woman. I went inside and told David. He laughed so hard he choked on his sandwich. But the clock was ticking. 2 days before the move. The house was mostly empty on our end. Our moving truck was coming the next morning. Michael and Sophia had rented a storage unit, but they hadn't hired movers. They were trying to do it themselves to save money for the Italian couch. It was painful to watch. Michael was trying to lift heavy dressers by himself. Sophia was standing around pointing at things, directing him, but not lifting a finger. Be careful with that. I'd yell. That's vintage. Finally, around 8 p.m., Michael knocked on our bedroom door. He looked broken. He was covered in sweat, his shirt torn, dirt smudged on his face. Dad, he rasped. Can't do it. There's too much stuff. The truck is too small. I can't fit it all. Can you help me? Please. Just for an hour. David looked at his son. He loves Michael. I know he does. It killed him to see Michael suffering. But he knew if he helped now, the lesson would be lost. If he saved him now, Michael would never learn to save himself. David stood up. He put a hand on Michael's shoulder. Son, he said gently. Can't. My back is shot from packing my own house. And honestly, you accumulated this stuff. You have to move it. If it doesn't fit in the truck, maybe you don't need it. But Dad, Michael pleaded. No, David said. Hire movers, Michael. Spend the money. You have it. Stop being cheap and start being an adult. Michael hung his head and walked away. 10 minutes later, I heard him on the phone, frantically calling late-night movers, paying triple the rate for a last-minute emergency crew. I looked at David. That was hard, I said. Yeah, he said, staring at the door. But it was necessary. The next morning, move-out day. Our movers arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. Professional, efficient. They loaded our boxes, our furniture, our life. Took them 4 hours. By noon, our part of the house was broom clean. Michael's crew, the expensive emergency movers, arrived at noon. It was a circus. Boxes weren't taped properly. Furniture wasn't wrapped. Sophia was screaming at the movers, accusing them of scratching things that were already scratched. We did our final walkthrough. The house echoed. Felt strange. 30 years of memories. And now it was just walls and windows. I walked into the master bedroom, the room we had given up for them. It was a wreck. There were stains on the carpet. Holes in the wall where they had hung heavy pictures without anchors. The bathroom grout was black with mold. They had destroyed it. I felt a pang of sadness, but then I remembered. The bulldozers were coming. It didn't matter. The mold, the stains, the holes, it was all getting crushed. We walked out to our car. It was packed with our suitcases and snacks for the road trip. We were ready. Florida awaited. Sunshine, beaches, and silence awaited. Michael and Sophia were standing by their rental truck. The luxury SUV was packed to the roof. Noah was strapped in his car seat, screaming his head off. The cat was yowling in a carrier. They looked miserable. Sophia walked over to us. She didn't look smug anymore. She looked tired, defeated, and scared. "So this is it?" she asked. "You're really leaving?" "Yes," I said. "We are." "What are we supposed to do for 6 weeks?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We found a motel that takes pets, but it's a dump, Emily. It's off the highway. Smells like smoke." I looked at her. I felt a flicker of pity, but then I remembered the cutting ties speech. I remembered the thanks for nothing attitude. "Well," I said, "it's only 45 days. You can do anything for 45 days. Think of it as an adventure. It'll make you appreciate the new house even more." She looked at David. David put on his sunglasses. "Goodbye, Sophia," he said. "Take care of my grandson. We'll expect a call when you're settled, but not before." He got in the car. I looked at Michael. He was standing by the truck, looking at his feet. "Bye, Mom," he said softly. "Bye, Michael," I said. "Love you. But you need this." Got in the car. David started the engine. We backed out of the driveway. I watched them in the side mirror as we drove away. Standing in the driveway of a house that wasn't theirs anymore, surrounded by piles of stuff they didn't need, heading to a motel they were too good for. I turned to David. "Are we horrible parents?" "Yes." David reached over and took my hand. "No," he said. "We're parents who just retired." We hit the highway, and for the first 100 miles, neither of us said much. We were decompressing. But then, somewhere around the state line, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from our bank. I frowned. "That's weird," I said. "What is it?" David asked. "Open the app." My eyes widened. "David," I said, "you know that joint account we had with Michael? The one we set up when he was in college for emergencies? The one we forgot to close?" "Yeah," David said. "There shouldn't be anything in there. Maybe $5. "There's a transfer request," I said. "A transfer request for $10,000. Initiated by Michael." David nearly swerved the car. "What? He doesn't have 10 grand in there." "No," I said. "He's trying to overdraft it." "Oh, wait." I looked closer at the notification. It wasn't a transfer from the account. It was a request for a transfer from our main savings linked to it as overdraft protection. "He's trying to pull money from us," I whispered. "Even now. Even as we are driving away." "Sophia," David muttered. "That has Sophia written all over it." She probably told him to try it, thinking we wouldn't notice or that we'd just let it slide to help them with the hotel. I declined the transaction immediately. Then I called the bank and closed the link. "Denied," I said, tapping the screen. 5 minutes later my phone rang. It was Michael. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Then a text came through. "Mom, please. The motel wants a security deposit and we're over our daily limit on the debit card because of the movers. Please just transfer the money. I'll pay you back as soon as the house closes." I stared at the phone. "I'll pay you back. The lie of the decade." I typed back. "Use a credit card, Michael. Or call Barbara. The bank of Mom and Dad is permanently closed." I blocked the number. Just for the day. I needed peace. We drove south. The further we got from that toxic house, the lighter I felt. The sky seemed bluer. The air seemed cleaner. We stopped at a roadside diner for pie. We laughed about the time Sophia tried to tell me that my homemade lasagna was too carb-heavy, while eating 3 servings. We arrived in Florida 2 days later. Our condo was perfect. Small, yes, but perfect. A balcony overlooking a golf course. Palm trees swaying. A pool that was heated and quiet. No toys. No screaming. No judgment. We spent the first week just sleeping. We slept like teenagers. We walked on the beach. We drank cocktails at noon. It was paradise. But, of course, you can't outrun drama forever. The 45 days were ticking away. And I knew deep down that when that closing date approached for their new house, something was going to go wrong. Because people like Sophia, they don't just sail into the sunset. They crash into the dock. It was about 3 weeks later. We were sitting on the balcony watching the sunset. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Area code from back home. Answered it. Hello. Is this Emily? A woman's voice asked. Who is this? This is Sarah from Sunshine Realty. I'm the agent representing the sellers for the property Michael and Sophia are purchasing. My stomach dropped. Why was the realtor calling me? Yes, said cautiously. Well, I'm sorry to bother you, she said, sounding stressed. But I can't get a hold of Michael or Sophia. Their phones seem to be disconnected or off. And we have a major problem. What kind of problem? David asked, leaning in to listen. The financing, Sarah said. The underwriters did a final check this morning. They found some irregularities. Irregularities? Yes. It seems Michael took out a massive personal loan 3 days ago to cover moving expenses. High-interest loan. And, well, combined with a car lease and the credit card debt that just spiked, their debt-to-income ratio just exploded. Closed my eyes. The motel. The movers. The storage. They had put it all on credit. So what does that mean? Yes. It means the loan is denied, Emily. The mortgage has fallen through. They aren't buying the house. The deal is dead. Gasp. And she continued, since they waived the financing contingency to make their offer more attractive, they are going to lose their earnest money deposit. $50,000. I put the phone on speaker so David could hear. I'm calling you, Sarah said, because your name was listed as a secondary contact on the original application from months ago. I need to tell them. They need to vacate the premises if they tried to move anything in early. And they need to know that the house is going back on the market tomorrow. I thanked her and hung up. We sat there in silence. The warm Florida breeze felt suddenly cold. They didn't have a house. They had lost 50 grand. They were living in a motel. And they had no jobs in Florida, no house back home, and burned bridges with every family member they had. They were truly, completely 100% on their own. David looked at me. He didn't look smug anymore. He looked sad. What do we do? He asked. I looked out at the ocean. I thought about the last 10 years. I thought about the disrespect. I thought about the entitlement. But I also thought about Noah. We wait, I said. We wait for them to call. And 2 days later the call came. But it wasn't from a cell phone. It was from a payphone. Or maybe a hotel lobby phone. It was Michael. And he was crying. Not the whining crying he did before. This was the deep, gut-wrenching sobbing of a man who has lost everything. Mom. He choked out. Mom, it's gone. The house is gone. The money is gone. Sophia. Sophia left. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. The ocean breeze on the balcony suddenly felt stifling. David was watching me, his face tight with worry. Sophia left. I repeated, my voice steady but my heart pounding. What do you mean she left? Where is Noah? She took the car, Michael sobbed. She said she couldn't live like this. She said I was a failure. She drove to her mother's. She took Noah, Mom. She took him to Barbara's. And I'm at the motel. Have the cat. And a bunch of boxes. And that's it. I don't have a car. I don't have a house. I don't have my wife or my son. He took a jagged breath. Mom, I messed up. I messed up so bad. You were right. About everything. We were living in a fantasy. And now I'm nothing. I looked at David. He could hear Michael's voice through the phone, the raw desperation. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This was rock bottom. And as a parent, you wait for rock bottom not to kick them, but to see if they can finally find the ground to stand on. Michael, I said, my voice softening. Listen to me. You are not nothing. You are our son. But you are in a hole that you dug. And Sophia? Well, Sophia just showed you who she really is. She left me when the money ran out, he whispered. Just like you guys. Well, not like you guys. You guys stayed for 10 years. She didn't last 3 weeks in a motel. There it was. The realization. The truth that had been hidden under layers of entitlement and, yes dear, passivity. He finally saw the difference between love and opportunism. So what are you going to do? He asked. I don't know, he cried. Have no money. The bank accounts are frozen or empty. I can't even pay for another night here. I'm going to be on the street with a cat in an hour. David reached over and took the phone from my hand. Michael, he said firmly. This is Dad. Michael's voice broke. Listen to me, David said. We aren't going to send you money. Sending you money fixes the problem for a day. We need to fix your life. There was silence on the other end. Here is what is going to happen, David continued. You're going to call Barbara's house. You're going to ask to speak to Sophia. You are not going to beg. You are not going to plead. You are going to tell her that you are figuring things out and you will be in touch about Noah. Then, you are going to go to the bus station. The bus station? Michael asked, confused. I'm buying you a ticket. A one-way ticket to Florida. It leaves in 3 hours. You can bring 2 bags. That's it. Leave the rest. Sell it to the motel clerk, give it away, leave it in the room. I don't care. 2 bags. And the cat. You can bring the cat if you have a carrier. But, my stuff, the furniture. David cut him off. Michael. The furniture is gone. The life you thought you had is gone. Do you want to rebuild? Or do you want to guard a pile of consumer junk in a motel parking lot until you starve? I'll go to the bus station, Michael whispered. I'll text you the confirmation number. Get on the bus. It's a long ride. You'll have plenty of time to think. When you get here we will pick you up. And we will talk. David hung up the phone. He looked drained. He slumped back in his chair. Was that the right thing to do? He asked me. He nodded. We're bringing him home. But not to the nest. To boot camp. The next 24 hours were agonizing. We tracked the bus online. It was a 20-hour ride. We imagined Michael sitting there, cramped, tired, watching the country roll by, realizing that his luxury SUV, his designer clothes, his status, meant absolutely nothing without the character to back it up. We picked him up at the station in Tampa the next afternoon. He looked terrible. He hadn't shaved. His clothes were wrinkled. He was holding a small duffel bag and a plastic cat carrier. He looked 10 years older than when we left him 3 weeks ago. When he saw us, he dropped the bag. He didn't run. He just walked over slowly and hugged David. Then he hugged me. He held on for a long time. He smelled like stale bus air and regret. I'm sorry, he whispered into my shoulder. I'm so sorry. We drove him to the condo. We set him up on the pull-out couch in the den, the same one we told Sophia was impossible to sleep on. It wasn't impossible. It was just humble. We sat him down with a hot meal. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Then we talked. We told him the rules. Rule number 1. You live here for 3 months. Maximum. This is a reset, not a residence. Rule number 2. You get a job. Any job. Waiting tables, stocking shelves, landscaping. We don't care. You contribute to the household expenses immediately. Rule number 3. You deal with Sophia and the divorce like a man. You fight for custody of Noah, but you do it legally and calmly. You don't beg her to come back. If she left you because you're broke, she never loved you. Michael nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't roll his eyes. He just wrote it down on a notepad. Understand, he said. The next few weeks were a revelation. Michael got a job at a local hardware store. It wasn't glamorous. He was lifting lumber and mixing paint. But he came home tired and proud. He handed us a check for rent every Friday. It wasn't much, but it was the first rent he had ever paid us. He called Noah every night. Sophia was difficult. She was living with Barbara, and apparently it was a nightmare. Barbara was controlling, critical, and hated the mess Noah made. Sophia was miserable. She tried to guilt-trip Michael into taking her back, crying about how hard it was. Michael held firm. He told her, I'm rebuilding, Sophia. I'm working at a hardware store. I live on a pull-out couch. I have nothing to offer you but myself. And last time that wasn't enough. She stopped calling as much after that. But the real twist. The twist that changed everything. It happened about 2 months later. Michael was working a Saturday shift. A man walked into the hardware store. An older gentleman, wearing a beat-up fishing hat and a t-shirt. He needed help with some custom piping for a boat repair. Michael spent an hour with him. He was patient, knowledgeable, thanks to David teaching him over the years, and kind. He didn't try to upsell him. He just helped him solve the problem. The man thanked him and left. 2 days later the man came back. He wasn't wearing a fishing hat this time. He was wearing a suit. He asked for Michael. Michael, he said. I own a marine logistics company down at the port. We manage shipping for half the Caribbean. I've been looking for an operations manager who actually listens, works hard, and knows how to solve problems without an attitude. I liked how you handled that piping issue. You have an engineering brain and a service heart. He offered Michael a job. Real job. With a salary that was better than what he made back home. Michael came home that day floating on air. He told us the story. We popped a bottle of champagne, the cheap stuff, but it tasted like Dom Perignon. He started the job the next week. He was brilliant at it. He worked long hours, but he loved it. He saved every penny. 3 months passed. Michael moved out. Not into a mansion. Not into a luxury loft. He rented a small, clean 2-bedroom apartment near the water. It had second-hand furniture he bought himself. It was simple. He filed for divorce. It was messy, but he handled it with grace. He fought for 50-50 custody of Noah. Since he had a stable job, a stable home, and Sophia was living on her mother's couch with no income, the judge looked favorably on him. Sophia, realizing her gravy train was truly gone and her mother was driving her insane, eventually agreed to a settlement. She stayed up north with Barbara. Michael stayed in Florida. They worked out a schedule where Noah would spend summers and holidays with Michael, and Michael would fly up once a month. It wasn't perfect. Divorce never is. But it was honest. The first time Noah came to visit Florida was magical. I remember picking him up at the airport. He was 5 now. He ran into Michael's arms, screaming, "Daddy, Daddy." They went to Michael's apartment. It was small, but it was filled with love. Michael had set up a little room for Noah with a pirate theme. They spent the weekend building sandcastles, fishing off the pier and eating ice cream. We came over for Sunday dinner. Michael cooked. He made burgers on a small portable grill. We sat on his tiny balcony, plastic chairs scraping the concrete, eating burgers that were slightly burnt. And it was the best meal I had ever eaten. I looked at my son. He was tan, fit, and smiling. A real smile. Not the stressed, guilty smile of a man living a lie. He was independent. He was a father. He was a man. He caught me looking at him. "What?" he asked, grinning. "Is there ketchup on my face?" "No," I said, tearing up. I'm just happy." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thanks, Mom," he said. "For everything. For the house. For the help. And for kicking me out." I laughed. "You're welcome." "And Sophia?" "Well, the grapevine is a powerful thing. We heard from a neighbor back home that Sophia and Barbara had a massive falling out about 6 months after we left. Barbara apparently kicked Sophia out for being too messy. Sophia had to get a job as a receptionist and moved into a small studio apartment. Last I heard, she was dating a guy who drives a beat-up Honda and makes her pay for her own dinner. Karma, as they say, has a sense of humor. But us, David and I, are living our best lives. We play golf. We volunteer at the Sea Turtle Rescue. We have our quiet coffee in the morning and our wine on the balcony at night. And every few weeks, Michael comes over with Noah. The house is filled with noise and laughter, but this time it's welcome noise. Because at the end of the day they go home. To their own home. We saved our retirement. We saved our sanity. And in a weird, painful roundabout way, we saved our son. It wasn't the ending we expected when we bought that big colonial house 30 years ago. We thought we'd grow old there. We thought we'd pass it down. But life doesn't always follow the blueprint. Sometimes you have to burn the blueprint, sell the land, and move to the beach to find out who you really are. So, if you're sitting there letting your adult kids eat your retirement, afraid to set boundaries because you don't want to hurt their feelings, take it from me. Hurt their feelings. Save their lives. And then go buy yourself a condo with a view. Because the sunset looks a whole lot better when you aren't paying for someone else's premium cable. We were finally free. We were finally happy. And yes, we lived happily ever after. With a very, very big smile.